Hi, I'm the Game Master. You know, as we go into this new year, we've all got new plans, new objectives, New Year's resolutions. For me, a good amount of those have to do with clearing my backlog of games that I've got over the years, a few that I've gotten just a couple weeks ago, and really sitting down and playing some new, challenging things with friends and family. But I think that can be hard to do sometimes. And I want to talk about it. So pull up a chair, have a seat at the table, and whether you're a button mash, hack and slash, controller bash, or a meeple moving mastermind of maps, mats, and minis, if you ruffle at the awful riffle shuffle scuffle, or if you're a click clack, pick attack, number ball, luck sack, we're all here for the same reason. I'm Jay. Let's talk games. As we leave the holiday season, I think we've all got new toys, new games, new things we want to try over the next year. So I wanted to put together a list that you can follow on how you can introduce new games to your circle of friends and make it interesting and a smooth transition from whatever you normally do. I know myself, my circle of friends started off playing Dominion. We'd meet every week and play. If you haven't played it, it's a deck builder game where everyone is buying from the same pool of cards in the middle. And the idea is you get to the end of the game, whoever has the most victory points wins. Really simple to understand and really dynamic as people kind of catch on to what's strong and what's not. But moving them away from that, moving myself away from that, was a bit of a chore. You know, people fall into these rhythms and they like what they like. So when you have a new game, it can be a little difficult to make that game a mainstay and even get to play that game all the way through. So hopefully this list will be helpful for some of you that got a few new toys you want to play with and want to show other people the joy of board games. So step one on that list, and I know this is a doozy, actually play the game. That's it. Actually play the game. I'm going to make sure I play each board game at least once before I buy any new ones. Yeah, that's Scythe Rise of Fenris. I got it for Christmas. 3 Christmases ago. So I think we should probably start things off by talking about what we need to do to start playing a new game. And step one is actually play the game. Look, I know it's really tempting to make sure that everything is perfect, everyone's in place. If it is a 2 to 6 player game, making sure you have all 6 seats filled, because that's when the game is at its best. But that doesn't always happen. And I've had a number of games that sit on a shelf for years unused because we can't quite fill the right number of seats. You know, as it turns out, a lot of 4-player games, you can play with 3 players. And it might be a little imbalanced, it might be a little weird, the rules might not work perfectly, but you can still play the game, and you still have a lot of fun. And maybe next time, you put a different person in the hot seat, where they're having to fend off 2 people at a time because you don't have a 4th player to balance the board. Or maybe the game still works. You find you like it better at 3. You get this kind of team-up situation where you self-balance against whoever's in the lead. I think there's a lot of different ways that games function, and especially with different groups of people, different personalities, you can still find a lot of fun. So I encourage you to just sit down and try something new. Crack open a new game, read the rule book, don't bother trying to make sure all the rules are perfect up front, but make sure you have the basic framework, that everyone knows the direction you're headed, and you can have a lot of fun. I'm not going to buy any more giant boxes of miniatures until I'm done painting the ones I already have. Kickstarters I bought 3 years ago don't count. That's right. Knowing and understanding the rules of the game. This is by far the most complicated part of playing a new board game. And I will say, not all games make it easy. You see, some games come with a little booklet that looks like this. Tells you how to set the game up, what you do on your turn, what the goal of the game is. Really easy to understand, really simple. But again, that's a simple game. Then you have more complicated games, like Kill Team in Warhammer. You see, Kill Team delivers their rules in a book that looks like this. And now I understand that Games Workshop adds a lot of other detail in here, descriptions of different armies, a lot of lore about the world that you're playing in. And I think that's actually really critical to playing and enjoying the game. But it's not really needed for actual gameplay. And in fact, to play a game of Kill Team, you need this book and at least one other equally sized rule book to describe what the individual pieces on the field can do. So some games are not sufficient for just sitting down with friends and playing right off the bat, neither of you having read the book. You're going to spend more time reading the rules than actually playing the game. And so it really benefits from at least one player reading the rules ahead of time and kind of getting the broad strokes. Then you have other games, like trading card games specifically, that'll put out a rule book like this. Nice and simple. It's gone. That one's actually from 2002. It's one of the original rule books. Came from the Yugi starter deck. And the modern rules only bear a passing resemblance to what's presented in that book. You can still only have 5 monsters, plus 1 sometimes, and 5 spell or traps, plus 1 sometimes. But for the most part, you don't follow the 1 normal summon per turn, or at least 1 summon per turn, because you'll special summon 10 times. You don't really follow the spells only during your turn. Quick plays are prolific. Traps can only be activated the turn after you set them. Now the hand traps are everywhere. The game's changed a whole lot. And so the rules changed a whole lot too. The comprehensive Magic rule set is more than I care to print out. But it covers every corner case, every rules interaction. And every time a new set releases, it gets an update too. So how can we make that digestible for someone who's coming to the table new? Maybe not having played the game before, maybe not having played any games before. And I think that can be a little tricky. I'd say there are 2 broad categories of rules for the game. One of them is game mechanics, and one of them is game structure. Okay? To talk about mechanics, we talk about what we do during a turn, right? What interactions there are on the board or between the pieces, how we interact with individual parts of the game. So sometimes with something like Kill Team, the game mechanics will be what actions you can choose, right? What movement looks like, what our weapons do, how to read a data card, how to do all of these different things. This is the mechanics of the game. For something like Magic the Gathering, the mechanics are largely the text on the card, but broadly I would describe the mechanics being that every card has a cost. That cost is generated by lands or other sources that can produce mana, and then the card says what it does. You can explain attack and defense and kind of damage, but that is something that can be described while the game is being played. I think it's really important to note that a lot of these mechanics can be defined mid-game. You don't need to lay out all the mechanics ahead of time. There's usually more than people are willing to listen to. On the other side of things, you have the structure of the game. And the structure represents setup, win conditions, and general flow if things change, right? So I'd say the general structure for Magic would be that the setup is you shuffle your deck. Each person has a deck of cards that they have put together themselves, and that will not change. The cards are randomized. You draw 7 cards, and then every turn you're going to draw 1 more. And so that's how you continue to interact with those pieces. But the goal of the game is to reduce your opponent's life total from 20 to 0. If a card says something else, the card wins, right? Magic has a pretty static structure over the course of a game. It's very rare that things are going to change dramatically phase by phase. Kill Team, the structure changes every turning point, right? There's 4 turning points, and the goals of each of those turning points can change based on the scenario that you're playing. How you set up the map ahead of time, how you position your units, where you move, whether you're on engagement or concealed. There's a lot of different things that change over the course of the game. And so talking about those ahead of time is pretty important. Something like Here Kitty Kitty, being this simple game that I presented up front, the goal of the game is to have the most cats. The mechanics of the game are play cards that let you get more cats. You are a homeowner who wants to get cats. That's it. That's the entire game. You do what the cards say. You try to have the most cats at the end. You have a little card that tells you how points score. But other than that, there's not a lot here. It takes seconds to set up, and you can jump right into it. So how can we get people that are used to games like that playing something more complicated, like Kill Team or like Magic? Well, the first thing you can do is set up the game ahead of time. Have the pieces organized, have the board arranged, and understand the rules to the point where you can say, this is the broad structure of the game. You're playing this team, this deck, this whatever. You are a planeswalker, summoner, commander of an army, whatever. Put them into the game. Get them kind of in that headspace for how they should interact with the board structurally. And then the mechanics, you can cover it as you go. Again, this is not a perfect system. Rules are going to get missed. Probably some pieces are going to be misinterpreted, and that's okay. This is just for playing the game the first time. But I guarantee if you don't overwhelm people with setup, with mechanics, with all of these different intricacies that they don't need to know yet, it's probably going to work better. And I think that brings us to the third point. The third big step in teaching people a new board game, and this might be controversial, but it's house rules. It's changing the rules as needed to make the game interesting and make the game fun. And as much as this might go against the spirit of whoever designed the game, I think it's important that you suit the game to the players rather than the reverse. I'm going to only buy Magic singles. No more sealed product. Don't look at that. Don't. Look at me. Look at me. Step 3, house rules. I think it's really cool when people make house rules. I think it's great. Because the reality is, different people play games differently. And sometimes games are balanced in a way that expect a certain type of play that maybe that group doesn't really care for. Maybe they like something a little more free-flowing. Maybe they want something a little more aggressive. I remember the first couple times we played Twilight Imperium. It's a huge space battle style game. And the way the game is designed is to make combat costly, but diplomacy contentious. So a lot of the work that you do is about building allies, establishing borders, trying to create different kind of real-life embargo situations amongst the players at the table. And if you do want to invade, if you are planning on attacking, it should be very well telegraphed, and you should be seeing forces build up on the border so you have a chance to respond. It's a really cool, intricate game. But the first couple times we played, we had missed the rule that you can't move ships out of an area with an activation token. The idea is that each round, you can only move one fleet of ships once. In order to move it again, you have to have a way of removing that activation token. And so Warfare does that. A couple of the races have an ability to do that. But we weren't using that. And what that led to is this really dynamic, combative style of play where if you had the resources, you could continue to rampage your army across the map. And you had these situations pop up where somebody had just made a death ball and in one turn swept through the galaxy, taking planets and whole fleets off the board. And that was really cool. We realized that we were playing with the rules wrong and tried playing differently. And I think it made the game less interesting. Maybe not the game itself, but it definitely made it less interesting to me. I like having that threat looming where if you allow somebody to build up a force, you are opening yourself up to the potential that they are going to come at you. And I think that's really cool. But I understand that does change the nature of the game dramatically. So I don't know that the house rules for everybody, but it works for us. And for something like Magic the Gathering, house rules are all over the place, right? Magic is a game with a lot of different formats. So one of my favorite house rules, we've been playing it for well over 10 years, is Elder Dragon Highlander, or Commander. I mean, I know it's official now, but at the end of the day, it started as a house rule. I first heard about it from a friend who said, hey, we're getting together next Saturday, and we're going to try playing Magic with this new style of play. You have to build a special deck for it. And he described the rules of it: 40 life, singleton, pick a commander, color identity, whatever. So put a deck together, and let's try it out. So I had a green-black deck. It was a lot of fun. But that was a house rule. That's not a real format. And the fact that that took off, and other things like Emperor, what other weird ones? Wizard Tower. There's 100 different formats that people have made, and I'm coming to mind mostly the more recent ones that are derivatives of Commander, like Gladiator, or Tiny Leaders, or Oathbreaker. But these are all house rules. These are all different styles of play that you would use to tailor to the people playing the game. Within the context of playing a new game, I would say that, in general, our house rule is if a rule is realized to be wrong, it stays wrong for that whole game. We're going to finish it out. If we find out, oh, shoot, you're not supposed to get gold the second time you do that thing, it's only the first time per turn, and you have somebody who's just like, I've built my entire deck around doing this over and over and over and over again to get gold. You know, play the game out. Don't pull the rug out from under somebody midway through their strategy. Let the game play out the way that it's going to play out. And then at the end of the game, decide, well, is that actually broken? Or does this work? Because sometimes you uncover things that are actually kind of interesting. Other ways of playing the game. And you might make a new Commander format.
I'm going to stop buying into new franchises without knowing anyone else who plays them. Do you know how to play Digimon?
And finally, that brings us to our fourth point. Make the game fun. I know it can be difficult to get into a new game and try something that's outside of your comfort zone, and maybe something that's very different from the other people at the table. But the reality is, if people aren't having fun, it's not successful. Right? Find a way to make the game interesting. And barring that, maybe that game's just not for you. Maybe you need to try something different. Grab a different game. Try again on another day. That's okay. You know, I believe there are no bad games. I think that different people have different expectations and different preferences. And the real trick is finding what type of game works for you. What you find interesting, what really clicks with your group. Hidden information games, really heavy politicking games, those don't work at certain tables. And the only way you can find out is to give it a shot. Sit down, actually play the game, understand the rules, and adjust them as needed to make it fun for everyone at the table. Anyways, that's how I like to approach it. I think you should give it a shot. It's been nice talking to you.